Good evening, everyone, and welcome to BT's Fly Tying Friday. Tonight, the 10th of November, 2023, John Wright is going to show us how to tie flies with one hand. And the weekly tip is going to be done jointly with Mike Paradas and John Wright. And they're going to be talking about guards. You're going to have to stick around just to find out what they're really talking about when we're talking about guards. We're Al and Gretchen Beatty from Boise, Idaho. And let me introduce John Wright. John was born and raised in upstate New York. Upon graduation from high school, he attended the U.S. Air Force Academy, graduating in 1967. John served 22 years as an Air Force pilot, retiring in 1989. Since that time, he has worked in the computer industry and taught information technology. John leads the Omaha Project Healing Waters program and serves as an assistant lead for operations for Omaha. He has been fishing since he was 5 and fly fishing for over 50 years, but only been tying flies since 1977. He started Tenkara fly fishing 2 years ago. John loves fly fishing with Project Healing Water vets and working with kids through the Nebraska Game and Parks community fishing program. Tonight, let's welcome John to BT's Fly tying one-handed all the way from Omaha, Nebraska. It's John Wright.
I work with Project Healing Waters, and a lot of our guys have disabilities. Now, most of them here in Omaha have PTSD and traumatic brain injury and that sort of thing. We don't have any right now that have physical disabilities, but we do, as fly tyers and fly instructors here in Healing Waters, try to get ourselves prepared for what happens should we pick up, say, a one-handed fly tyer or a one-handed caster. So that's what I'm going to try and demonstrate tonight. I'm going to demonstrate two approaches to tying with one hand. One approach just uses some of the tips that Alice has shared with us over the last few weeks. And then another one using a device that was specifically designed for one-handed fly tyers called the Evergreen hand. This is my overhead camera, so here's my vise. Well, the first thing that we teach any beginning fly tyer, and that's what I'm going to do tonight. I'm going to approach this as if my one-handed vet is a brand new beginner. He may have tied one fly in our beginning fly tyers program. The first fly we teach them is, of course, the San Juan worm. And the fly I'm going to tie tonight, the willy bugger, is the second fly we teach them. So the first and most difficult, or sometimes the most difficult part of teaching a beginner how to tie flies is, believe it or not, just trying to get the thread on the hook. So I'm going to use one of the little tips, and this was given to us by Sherry Steele a few weeks ago. And you may recognize this one. You probably don't recognize. There we go. Everything's backwards. But what you probably will recognize is this. Those are those test clips that Sherry talked about. When I was searching for those, I ran across these. And these are also test clips, but they are the alligator type. I found some surgical tubing in a hospital when I was up there last week with my wife, and I glued that on the tips. I found had some flange bolts over in my shop, so I glued them on the end and glued a couple of anchors on the bottom here, the magnets. So what I can do now is I can grab a hold of my thread with this guy, put that right there on the pad, oops, grab a hold of the thread. There we go. And then put it, the magnet holds it. And this is a peak vise, so it's got a good solid steel base there that the magnet really hangs onto. Oh, I suppose I ought to put a hook in the vise first. Sorry about that. So let me do that first. Let me grab my hook. I will put that right down here on the vise, and I'm going to use another one of the little things that we learned, or was shown by Joel Evans a few weeks ago, and that's this guy right here. I think you remember these. These are model holders, and they Go right like so. So I'm going to do is I'm going to grab a hook with this clip on the end. And unfortunately, it's not tall enough to reach the vise. So I thought about this for a while, and I went up to my wife's pantry and I found this. A can of soup. Put that right there like so. And it's a steel can. So I can put this on top of it. And then I just run it over to the vise, to the jaws, and clamp her down. Release it. And there's the hook. All in nice and pretty. Now I can go back, grab my bobbin. Okay. Grab the thread out. There we go. And now up here, a couple of wraps forward, just like we would if we were tying it with two hands, except now the magnetic clip and the base take the place of my second hand. And I can just move that around and I can tie back. And if I want to, I can keep moving that backwards so I get nice tight wraps. And I'll just grab my scissors and clip that. I'm going to switch cameras here so you can get a shot of what that looks like. And now I will just run this backwards all the way back to the barb and the hook, where I'm going to tie in my tail. Here we go. Just let that hang. You don't need that right now. Okay, here's what we're going to use for our tail. Good old black marabou. What I'm going to do is this is one of those clips. I'm going to change this because that doesn't, the magnet doesn't hold it too well. So I'm going to put it into one of these. Can you see that? No, you can't see it. Okay. Let me go back to the overhead. There we go. Okay, I'm going to grab that right there and release it. And now I've got it nice and held. So now what I'm going to do is put that right there. I'm going to grab this is just a plastic top of the spray can, and I got a sponge in there with water in it. I'm going to wet this down pretty good. It just makes it a little easier to work with the marabou if it's pretty wet, especially when I've found trying to do this one-handed. The wet marabou just makes it a lot easier. Okay. Now, so now the second skill you have to teach him is how do you get and put the materials on the hook? Well, that's always a little bit of a challenge, but what we do, and Al showed me this trick, is I come back up here and I move this underneath the hook. Like so. And I just bring it around. So now I've got the marabou trapped under the thread, and I can adjust it. So I got the tail about the right length. And now I'm just going to wrap around a couple of times. There we go. And I'm not going to cut it off, and I'll show you why in just a minute. But there's our tail. And that looks a little long, but I'm going to leave it that way. All right, the next thing we need to put on is the hackle. I'm going to put the hackle on the back. I know a lot of people tie it on the front, but I like to tie it on the back. So once again, I'm going to take my different camera here, go back to the overhead. Okay, there's my hackle. Again, using these clips, grab it right there, put it here, and now I'm going to pull up and separate those fibers. just like we do with two hands. And now, same thing. Underneath, grab it. Come here, you. There we go. Right up and over. And then release it. There we go. Now I'll tie that down pretty good. There we are. I'm going to grab this marabou right here. And I'm going to wrap forward. I want to get that hackle down really good and tight. Okay. Now, I'm going to grab the marabou at the end right here, and I'm going to palmer wrap it forward. This takes the place of the chenille. And I'm going to stop about 2 eye widths back. I think one more wrap. There we go. Around behind it. Around behind it. And in front. Get my scissors. And cut off the waist. Now I'm going to trim this up a little bit. I got way too much marabou hanging around. There we go. That looks pretty good. And again, what we're trying to do is teach basic principles here. The first one is attaching the thread to the hook. The second principle is attaching the materials to the hook. And the third principle now is how we wrap the materials onto the hook. So I'm going to grab this and I'm going to use my hackle pliers. And now I'm going to palmer wrap this hackle forward. And if I had, and I don't know why I couldn't find them today, I couldn't find my bobbin holder. If I had a bobbin holder, I would put the bobbin in the bobbin holder, but I don't. So I'll have to work around it. Come forward. Probably one more wrap should do it. Maybe 2. There we go. Okay, around behind. Around behind. Behind, and then in front. Okay. Now I can cut off the waist. Come on. There we go. And now the last principle that I teach, that this particular fly teaches, and we already taught this in the first program, or the first fly we tied, is how in the world are you going to finish it off? How are you going to tie a half hitch on this thing? And actually, it's pretty simple. You do it the old-fashioned way. You use your hands, or your hand in this case. Once. Twice. 3 times. There we go. Grab my pliers. Oh, now let's do it this way. It's nice to have 2 or 3 of these around. And there you go. There's a one-handed woolly bugger. It may not be the prettiest in the world. I'll guarantee it won't win bronze or silver award from the fly fishing or the fly tying group, but it will catch fish. And the veterans that learn how to tie these and practice it will get every bit as good tying these with one hand as you and I are tying it with two. Okay. So that's how you do it with minimal equipment. Let me put this over here.
Before we move to the second option, do you have any questions for John?
I guess I
Bill
must have done a
Sanders
good
said
job.
Great job.
Okay, give me a minute to get things set up for the Evergreen hand.
For those of you that don't know, the Evergreen hand was developed by the Evergreen Fly Fishers, I think is the name of the club, but it was a FFI club, FFF club in Washington State.
Yeah.
And that's who developed it. I cannot for the life of me think of the guy that did it, but anyway, I've got one of the first ones that he sent out, and I helped him do a magazine article on it. It was back in the Fly Fisher magazine, 10, 12 years ago.
Al, Aaron here. I
Yeah.
think it's Jesse Scott.
Yeah, I think you're right.
It. You bet. Jesse Scott, it sure was.
Yep. Yep. Okay, so let me show you the parts of it now. And I'm going to move my camera here a little bit so you can see it. Okay. This is the main part of it right here. This is just a steel plate mounted on an arm it's kind of like a J arm. And it connects to it down here. It's got a screw. And this connects to a base. You can see it right here. And that, of course, is attached right to the vice post. So let me go back to the overhead. There you go. Now you can see it. Here's the base, and here's the steel. And here are the tools that come with the Evergreen hand. This one you'll recognize. It's exactly the same thing as the modification that I made to Sherry's tools. And they send you one other that we won't talk about tonight, or we won't demonstrate tonight, and that's this thing right here. Let's see, can you see that? This is like a paper clip. And I use two hands to open it up, but basically you see it opens up like a paper clip. This is what you use to grab hair with. So you can push this down into your bundle, separate it out, and then you close it up. Come on. Close it up like so. And then you can slide this up and hold that hair in place. And it too is magnetized. So it sits right up there. So how do we use the Evergreen hand to tie a fly? I'm here to tell you, using the Evergreen hand, that makes it a lot easier than not. We get these free of charge from the folks that make them. Each program is authorized one. And we have one, and the Lincoln program has one now. So basically, I'm just going to take this and put the hook like so. I'm going to grab it, just like I did before. Except now I'm just going to slap that puppy right there. Slide it in place, lock it down. See how much simpler that was? I'm going to take this again. I'm going to take my bobbin, grab that thread, put it right there. There we go. And again, a couple of wraps, and then backwards over the thread, just as if we're at a two-handed fly tire. The nice thing about this now, and let me switch over to the to my C100 and change that a little bit so you can see it. There we go. Notice now my loose thread is up here, so it's not in the way. I'm not running a risk of cutting the thread on my bobbin because it's right there. And when I cut it, because it's on the stand, that thing isn't going anyplace at all. So I can get rid of that thread now. And again, same thing, tie it all the way to the back to the point of the hook. And I'm using 70 denier thread here, so it's pretty heavy duty thread. I have tried this with 8/0, and sometimes that 8/0 is just a little bit too fragile. And I also haven't tried tying anything down much below size 10 or 12 hook. I imagine trying to tie a size 20 or a 22 would be quite a challenge. Okay, once again, I'm going to wet down my marabou. This one's a little bit longer. There we go. That should be enough. Now, we're done here. Let me grab that a little closer to the tie-in point. That's why it's nice to have 2 or 3 of these magnetic clips around. There we go. Put it right there. I'm sorry. Let me get underneath here. There we go. Loose wrap. 1. Loose wrap. There. That's better. A much nicer tail there. All right. And now the same thing with the hackle. And I'll just do it right up here. Okay, there we go. Tie it in back to the tie-in point. Let me grab this. Get it up out of the way. There we go. Okay. And again, same thing we did before. I'm going to use the, and I lost my, use the remaining part of the, come on, of the marabou as my body. I think one more wrap should do it. Yep. Okay. Around behind. Up. And then one in front. clip off the waist without clipping off the. See if I can do this without clipping my thread. Good. Now let's just clean up that hackle. All this marabou here. I got extra. Okay. Now I'll grab my hackle. Oh, and we'll palmer it forward. Let me clean this up a little bit. Half hitch finish. Okay. Let's clean up some stuff here. And there we go. There's a woolly bugger tied with the evergreen hand. It's not the prettiest, but it will catch a fish. Of that I have no doubt. And a veteran will be able to tie this and then use it. And that's what 90% of what we're doing is all about, is getting the veterans to do something that they've never done before and experiment with it and then go fishing with it. What we've found is that more than once I've seen them on the water. We take a veteran out and we also run a rod building class, and we have them build their own rods and tie their own flies. And to see the difference that comes over them when they're out on the water is absolutely amazing. They just, in fact, I had one vet up to the verdigris a couple of weeks ago, and when we got done, he said, that's the most amazingly peaceful time I've had in a long time. So Al Nicholson was right. Fly tying and fly fishing it does help along the road to recovery. So, and I want to thank Al for his hints and suggestions. That really did help a lot, Al. Thank you.
Of course, it's well, at best, my hat's off to you for being willing to take on a task like this on Zoom in front of the whole doggone world to do that. Because rest assured, back in the 80s, I taught a couple of veterans who had limited two-handed use, not completely loss of a hand, and that was a challenge. I can only imagine what it's like doing it with one hand completely gone.
Yeah. And that happened to us. We were up at Lincoln about 3 years ago, and we did not expect any physically handicapped people to show up. And one day one showed up and he says, I only got one hand. Can you teach me how to tie a fly? Caught us completely flat-footed, because neither the program, the other program lead nor I, nor any of our volunteers had ever done it before. And we just scratched our heads and said, boy, I don't know, but we'll find out. And we did. And we found the evergreen hand, and we started practicing it and using it the next month when we came back, and he never came back. So we had a chance and we blew it because we didn't have the tools when they were necessary. So,
okay, moving on to the tip tonight. We're going to have a couple of guard tips. We're going to start with Michael Paradas on a guard, and then John Wright will follow. Now, FYI to all of you, let me bring Michael into the picture. And he's going to talk to us about a guard. And he's also got a bunch of information he just uploaded to the chat with hyperlinks to take you on the internet to various places to get some of the things he's going to talk about. So, Michael, go right ahead.
Okay, thanks, Al. Like Al said, I'm Michael Paradas, and I'm a member of Sierra Pacific Fly Fishers in San Fernando Valley, and I host our fly tying group. And what I'm going to show you isn't anything very complicated. It's something we came up with many years ago, and I'm sure other people around the world have done the same thing. We used to create these. These are silicon rubber, and we use them to clean up situations where we got a little sloppy tying the fly, and there's no room to get in there and create a nice head and whip finish. And the way we use these are, I'm just going to take this one and turn the light up a little bit. This has, it's split, and it's got a little angle cut. And what we do is slide this over the hook, and it'll slide over the thread. And I'll turn the vise so you can see where the thread's coming from. And just continue sliding this back. And that gives us room to go ahead and make a little head and make a little whip finish. Without trapping the fibers. And then we can just continue sliding that off the back of the hook.
That is just too easy, Michael. It's too easy.
Looking at what was going on with the tying with one hand, this kind of a thing would be probably usable for a one-handed vet tying a fly.
Absolutely.
Let me show you how. I've got 3 different sizes of material, and like Al said, I put the information, if you're interested in getting any of this, I put the information in the chat, and I've got 3 different sizes of tubing. The red and the green are the silicon rubber. This happens to be surgical tubing. The purpose of this is, if you go back a few years, remember Whammo slingshots?
Mm-hmm.
This is the rubber band, the rubber that was used for slingshots, and the material comes in a variety of colors. And I've found other uses for it too, like protecting your scissor tips, and any sharp instrument you can use to use this stuff to help protect it. And I'm just going to do a quick demo on how this is created on this big piece. So I've got the little piece here. Just take an angle cut, and then go back to where the bottom of the cut is, and take a slice there, and that's it. You've got a nice tool. This is just for a larger fly. It'll do the same thing, just
Cool.
And that's it, guys and gals.
Michael, thank you so much. Anything else for anyone? Well, we're going to then switch to John Wright, who has a different type of a guard for us.
Thank you, Al. Actually, you've been looking at this all night long. You just didn't realize what it was. Come on. There we go. This is it right here. It's the colored background. And, you've seen Al use them, and everybody uses them. The problem I have a very small workspace. I mean, I'm on a desk that's only about 18 inches wide. So it's kind of hard for me to put anything up. Mick Bretz, the program lead down in St. Louis, showed me this, and he got it from somebody else. Basically, all it is. Yeah, you see how limited space I'm in. Let me bring this down. There we go. And there's all it is right there. Some of you may recognize this as the wind guard for microphones.
Yeah,
And it connects. And you see, I just put this on a little stand that's got a 3/8 inch steel rod in it. And I just put it up on the shelf here and then just drop it down like so. And then I can attach my paper to my color to it. And that's all there is. And then in order to attach the stuff,
So
I don't know if you can see this.
Background for tying against, so it's easy. You don't have to look at a busy background.
Yeah, exactly. And what I do is I attach it with these right here. These are those removable sticky fibers that you can get. You used to hang pictures on them on the wall. You can just pull it off and release them. And it comes in.
Band strip or something.
Yeah,
like
it comes
that.
in rolls like that. You just cut off a little piece, stick it on here, and attach it to the guard. And now you got a nice, lightweight, portable background.
Hey, before we leave, let's do that. Barry, would you talk about that for just a second? Not to put you on the spot or anything,
Yeah,
but
sure, I'd be glad to. So a lot of you may know that we traditionally have had a fly tying event with the fly tying group as part of the FFI Expos. Well, we're not doing FFI Expos right now. We've been doing virtual ones. And last year, the fly tying group decided that we needed to get together and have a fly tying group rendezvous. And we had the first annual one of those in Branson, Missouri in the September timeframe. We had 45 or 50 FTG fly tires that came over for that. And we had a great time. We wound up raising north of $5,000 for the fly tying group through an auction and things like that. And the consensus is that was a great event, and we want to continue to do it on an annual basis. And so we're working on a similar event, probably shooting for the September of 2024 timeframe. And we don't have a venue picked out yet. Potentially we could go back to Branson. We did hear from some folks that was challenging to get there for them. And so we're looking at other alternatives that might solve some of those problems. We'd also like to have some way to get lots of folks that are not tyers to come to the event to observe the tying festivities and bring their money for the auction. And so we're looking at all of those things, but we'll try to structure something very similar in nature. Will probably be a Friday and Saturday type event so that you could come in and then get back home. And the requirements for tires is that you belong to FFI and belong to the fly tying group. And so that's kind of what we're working on. And watch this space. We'll get more information out We hope to have a venue selected no later than about the first quarter of next year, so everybody will have plenty of time to plan for it. And we'd like to have 100 or maybe 200 tires at this next one. So
I would suggest people start thinking about saving the date.
yeah, and
Okay.
we'll as soon as we lock in a venue, we'll obviously lock in a date as well and get that published on the calendars.
Well, everyone, we've had a great time this evening with all of you on Fly Tying Friday with the Beaties. Please join us again next Friday. But for now, it's a wrap.